Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Just a couple more things. I want to turn our attention to immigration here, but a couple of pieces of information I want to pass along to you. We've been concerned about Planned Parenthood for some time, and for a long time, really, since the beginning. And this is an interesting thing. Planned Parenthood produces a lot of sex education materials, a lot of them in kind of graphic cartoon form, comic form. And the American Life League wanted to put a full-page ad in the New York Times and the Washington Post. And in this full-page ad, they reproduced images from actual Planned Parenthood sex ed material that are materials that are used for children as young as 10 years of age. So here's Planned Parenthood material. They intend it, and it's being used in places like the Girl Scouts to provide sex education for children as young as 10. So the American Life League, they take Planned Parenthood's own materials, they reproduce them in this ad, and the New York Times and the Washington Post would not publish them because they said they are too graphic. So the New York Times, the Washington Post, they're saying this is too graphic for adults. We can't let adults see this. This would be inappropriate for us to publish this in our newspaper. Virtual pornography. But of course, Planned Parenthood, the Girl Scouts, educators all over the fruited plain think that's just fine for 10-year-old students. One of the reasons this whole business about condom delivery to your door, Plan B, is so important. This Plan B thing, this morning after pill, now they can sell it over the counter to 15-year-olds. I called it a predator's paradise, a predator's playground. And here's the other thing. This is going to increase the amount of unprotected sex with teenagers because their boyfriend is going to say, hey, we don't need to use any protection. We can always get the pill, and you can take care of this in the morning. So it's going to increase that kind of activity. And, of course, nothing works 100% of the time. So this will simply increase the number of teenage out-of-wedlock pregnancies. But here's the other thing. It's going to contribute to a growth in sexually transmitted infections. Again, because there's no protection. There are certain diseases from which somebody can be protected if they use protection. That's going to go away. And now we're finding out at the same time that there is an antibiotic-resistant strain of gonorrhea. They're calling it a superbug. This is a sexually transmitted infection. And the experts are saying this could be worse than AIDS, or the effects could match those. This is a bacteria, not a virus, but it could match the effect of AIDS. It's more aggressive. It'll affect people more quickly. This strain that they've detected could put someone into septic shock and death in a matter of days. Discovered 2 years ago in Japan, but has since been found in Hawaii, California, and Norway. And there are other superbugs like MRSA, MRSA, and CRE, and these superbugs will kill about half of the people that they attack. And already right now, we've got 20 million Americans a year contracting a sexually transmitted disease. This Plan B drug is just going to make that even worse. And one of the bugs that's out there now is this superbug, this sexually transmitted infection. And most of these new STD infections are among people between the ages of 15 and 24. And this bug is transmitted through unprotected sexual contact. That's exactly the kind of sexual contact that is now going to increase in teenagers because the boyfriend is going to say, we don't need protection. We'll go get the Plan B pill at the pharmacy later tonight or early tomorrow morning. And there are a number of consequences of this STD, infertility, sterility, and heart infections. And one of the problems, about half of the women, it often shows no symptoms. So they don't even know they've got this thing that could produce sterility, infertility in them. So all that's going out on the family front. This is an interesting piece of news from Pittsburgh. Got a story about the number of high school science instructors who believe in creationism. They get to the AP lessons on evolution, and they gloss right over it because they don't believe that Darwinian stuff. And, of course, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is complaining about that. But I remember my son majored in science. He's a molecular biologist today and got a degree in molecular biology. He's moving into public health administration now. But that's what he did. He's been a research scientist. He is right now at the university at a university in the Northwest. And one of the things that really grabbed him about science was taking advanced placement biology as a junior in high school. Had a very good teacher, and kind of lit a fire under him for science, and that kind of charted the path that he pursued in college, and now in the early part of his career. And I looked through the AP biology textbook, a long section on evolution, and the instructor just skipped right over it, didn't even touch it, just gave it a glancing blow. And the reason I found in talking to her is that so many students are creationists in her class. They just kept asking these questions that she couldn't answer. And so she just decided, I'm just going to skip it. Because so many of the families, so many of the students in my advanced placement biology, these are the smartest kids in the school, so many of them have no belief in Darwinian evolution that it just complicates the whole thing. It's just too messy. It's just too difficult. I'm not even going to deal with it. Same thing going on here, apparently, in Pittsburgh. So that's a winnable war moment. No matter how hard these secular fundamentalists try to brainwash us, the American people just will not be brainwashed. I think the last polling data I saw, something like 40% of the American people believe that man and the universe was created about 10,000 years ago, despite the fact that that view has been lampooned, it's been ridiculed. Even my good friend Robert Jeffress went on Bill O'Reilly and said, hey, we don't know how old the earth is, even though the Bible clearly indicates it's only 10,000 years old. And that view has been ridiculed and mocked for decades. And yet the American people still choose to believe the Word of God and what it teaches about a young earth, a young age of man, and a young universe. Here's a story from New York about an elementary school that's adopted an all-vegetarian menu. Can you believe that? All vegetarian. Tofu wraps and veggie chili. Yikes, I'm glad I'm out of elementary school. And here's good news. You know that the Boy Scouts are getting ready to vote in May on whether to change their policy that prohibits homosexual scoutmasters and prohibits homosexual scouts, which is a good policy. Because if I'm a dad, I do not want an active 17-year-old homosexual sharing a tent on a camping trip with my 11 or 12-year-old son. I'm not interested in that. I don't want that. But this is exactly what the proposed resolution would provide. The Boy Scouts did a survey, the most comprehensive survey they've ever done in Boy Scout history to kind of test the waters. And they've discovered that 61% of those that are involved in scouting do not want this policy to change. Only 34% would like to see it change. So I think this is very, very good news. Good chance that the scouts, the people involved in scouting, are actually going to be the ones that are going to vote on this in May, and they are going to vote to, I believe, uphold the policy. And we want to support them. This Sunday is Stand with Scouts Sunday on AFR Talk, American Family Radio. This Sunday, May 5, 6 p.m. Central, Family Research Council is hosting a Stand with Scouts radio special. It's going to feature scouting officials, scout parents, government officials, and Eagle Scouts to support the existing pro-family policy. So that'll be this Sunday, May 5, 6 p.m. Central, right here on American Family Radio. You know, you look at what happened in Canada. They went pro-sodomy back in 1998, and they're half the size now. I mean, scouting has been literally cut in half in Canada when they adopted this pro-gay policy. They've had to sell off campsites and campgrounds and other facilities just try to make ends meet. Well, let's grab clip number 2 if we can, Rob. This, again, is on Benghazi. Remember, we got a huge problem in Benghazi. And here is that special ops guy. We brought you some sound bites from him the last 2 days. The special ops guy who has firsthand knowledge of what went down in Benghazi, talking about the fact the State Department and the military were on completely different sheets of music when this thing went down. They were not coordinating their efforts. Assets were called for as they're supposed to be. They were not provided, and people died. I've taken this as a montage of what he had to say on a special report that aired on Fox News last night. Let's listen.
They had no plan. They had no contingency plans for what if this happens. And that's the problem that the State Department is going to face in the future. They're dealing with more hostile regions, hostile countries. This attack's going to happen again.
That meant the authority then reverted directly to the U.S. State Department, and oversight of the response to the attack fell to Secretary Clinton and Undersecretary of State for Management Patrick Kennedy. They were calling the shots, multiple State Department sources tell Fox, and Kennedy was in the operations center monitoring the radio traffic and distress calls. We're also told by multiple sources that shortly after the attack began, around 9:40 p.m., Special Forces put out a call sign for all available assets, military and otherwise, in the vicinity to be moved into position to help.
That enacts every asset, every element to respond, and it becomes a global priority.
Was that given?
I will tell you that was given, and the only reason it was given is because of the Special Operations Pact, because it has nothing to do with the agency. It has nothing to do with the Department of State.
So Special Operations gave the call sign?
Yes.
But assets didn't move?
Assets did not move. It's horrible. When you're on the ground, you depend on each other. We're going to get through this situation. But when you look up and then nothing outside of the stratosphere is coming to help you or rescue you, that's a bad feeling.
Rob, let's grab clip 3 right now. Play the Carney clip. Hear no evil, see no evil. I'm clueless.
Last thing on Benghazi, since the President spoke yesterday briefly about that, the Defense Department and the State Department both have written letters, as I understand it, to Republican Darrell Issa saying that they're not aware of anyone coming to them asking for security clearances for their counsel or anything to come forward. First, is that your understanding? And second, if someone were to come forward, if they just haven't technically told their superior or something, if they were to come forward, is the White House willing to let them testify?
Well, again, I mean, that's a hypothetical, but let's be clear. Benghazi happened a long time ago. We are unaware of any agency blocking an employee who would like to appear before Congress to provide information related to Benghazi.
So that's Jay Carney. I know nothing. I see nothing. I'm as clueless as President Obama. I have no idea what you're talking about. We're not aware of anybody being hindered from giving testimony. Well, let's see him come forward next week. Back in 2. Stay with us.